The hour of 5 o'clock having a ride, I'd like to call to order the July 18th, 2018 Board of Directors for the Vallecitos Water District. And Director Evans, would you lead us in the pledge?
I would be happy to.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Diane?
Director Ellenberg?
Here.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Martin?
Present.
Director Canales?
Here.
Here. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Introductions. Hello.
Richie couldn't be here, so you're stuck in the meeting. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Anthony Glenn and Arturo, let me make sure I get the name, Sanchez, who goes by Art. Anthony is the new accounting supervisor. He started at the district on June 25th. That position was vacant due to a promotion. Anthony has worked for public agencies his entire career and joins us from Clark County Treasurer's Office in Washington State, where he worked for 3 years. In his spare time, Anthony enjoys the beach, so you're in a good place, hiking, woodworking, and spending time with his wife and 2 sons. So welcome, Anthony.
Welcome, Anthony.
Quick question, Rhonda. And who did he replace?
Wes.
Well,
And who did Wes? Oh, no. Thank you.
Sure.
moving on.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the next new employee is Arturo Sanchez, also started on June 25th, wastewater treatment plant operator 1. That position was vacant due to a resignation. Arturo holds a grade 2 wastewater plant operator certificate and has worked for Dudick, and is that how you say it? Dudick?
Yeah.
Environmental and Engineering for 3.5 years. In his free time, Arturo likes mountain biking and hiking and spending time with family. So welcome.
Welcome.
I'm going to say Art.
A quick question, Arturo, maybe you can explain it, because I read it and I think that's fantastic, that you're a meter service worker 2 with a certificate for cross-connection control specialist?
Oh, different Art. That's the next
Different
one
Art.
coming.
Sorry, Art, congratulations. Glad to be aboard.
Yes.
I just have one quick question. Whereabouts in Washington did you work? I didn't recognize Clark County.
Clark County, it's in Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, Vancouver.
Yeah, just on the other side of the Columbia from Portland.
Oh, well, lovely change for you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A little
excited.
bit more sun.
Oh, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you live in San Marcos?
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Very nice.
Very nice. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And we have a presentation.
Yes, we'll be bringing up another Art here. We'll be bringing out Art Alvarez. Art joined the district in June of 2006 as a meter service worker 1. In 2009, he was promoted to meter service worker 2. Art has earned the Cross Connection Control Specialist certificate issued by the American Backflow Prevention Association. Congratulations, Art.
Congratulations. Photo opportunity.
And while the president's meandering down there, maybe you could explain, Mr. General Manager, for the night.
Ouch.
What exactly a cross-connection control specialist is?
Sure. So on irrigation, also especially if you have recycled water or industrial areas on our system, we don't want anything that's being done on site to contaminate the public water system. So there's a backflow device. So when you have a backflow device, it needs to be certified, needs to be tested, and it's required to get a cross-connection control certificate in order to actually certify and do the testing.
Thank you.
And I had a quick comment. It's actually to you, Art. Did you not receive, or did we not receive a letter from a customer just a while back on you being extremely helpful?
Yes.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for continuing your certification. Just don't plan on moving away.
Amen. Very good. Anything further? Public comment, Diane? Oh, my goodness. Look at that. We must be doing the right thing.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Item number next would be the consent calendar. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mr. President, I'd like to pull one item,
Which item?
1.1B, regular board meeting minutes.
Very good.
1.1.
Can I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
Move to approve with that exception.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Taking up 1.1B.
Okay, I had a very minor suggested correction for the minutes for the June 20th regular board meeting. So if you go to 1.1B, page 11, and about midway down the page, the motion number 18-06-14 says motion was made by Vice President Martin, seconded by Director Elitharp, and carried unanimously 3-1. So I just caught that just before I came down here, so the suggestion is just take out unanimously. And with that, I'll move to approve the item as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Very good. Public hearings. Item 2.1, a public hearing to adopt a resolution of the Board of Directors to the Vallecitos Water District approving the sewer service fee to be collected on the tax roll for Improvement District A for the fiscal year July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. I believe James is going to take the floor on this.
Yeah, thank you, President Hernandez. Yes, back in June 20th of this year, the board took action on Resolution 1540, which adopted the methodology of collecting fees for sewer customers only, which is typically done on the tax roll. So this is a continuation of that action with the board resolution. This is the public hearing, which will now make it official to actually send the information to the county to start that process to collect the sewer-only customer billings on the tax roll.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Very good.
Resolution.
Oh, the resolution. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Director Elliott?
Yes.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Spinelli?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes. Action items, item 3.1 would be the ordinance establishing pump zone charges for fiscal year 2018-19 and 2019-20.
Finance Manager Wes Owen will be taking the
Yes.
this up with Mike. Sorry.
Oh, it's a tag team.
I'll stand up and say this. Actually, it's going to be, Mike Arthur's going to be taking the lead on this one. But how are we doing tonight?
Very good.
Wes, you're missing something.
No, I'm not. It's on the floor. I'm not presenting. I'll
Oh,
bring it
okay.
up later.
All right.
Thank you, Wes. President Hernandez, members of the board, thank you very much. Take me a second to get PowerPoint up. So we're here this evening to discuss updating the charges, the pass-through charges from SCG&E for the 10 pump zones that we have. Just a little background, we have 10 pump zones that serve approximately 2,900 customers. And the last year, we set the goal to collect 95% of the SCG&E costs to pass through onto the customers. And we elected to do that over a step process, so not all at once. So rather than raise the rates all the way up to 95%, I believe we were at 40% collection a year and a half ago. We wanted to do it in steps. So it's a phase-in approach. So tonight, we're hoping to adopt a 2-year increase or a 2-year adjustment to the rates. One would be effective as soon as administratively practical for this fiscal year, and then for next year, it would be July 1st, 2019. And just to show you a little bit, I went back to 2016-17 on this chart. So the blue line shows what we have collected over the past 3 years or 2 years, and then what we're projected to collect percentage-wise in fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20. So you'll see in 19-20, and then the red line is the 95%. So you'll see in next fiscal year, we should be at that 95% threshold. And then just a quick overview of the 10 pump zones that we have in the rates. The highlighted column is the current charges, which we're currently charging, which went into effect July 1st, 2018. The next column is the proposed rates that would be put on the customer's bill as soon as administratively practical for this fiscal year. And then for next year, on July 1st, 2019, the rates that would be for the 10 pump zones.
I have a question, and you may have answered it before, but I see that in 2 cases, the rate has gone down.
Correct.
Three cases.
3? Okay.
Yeah,
three.
previously, each pump zone was individualized, and the rates were set on that individual pump zone. Now, there may have been pumps that were inefficient or some other issues with those, so the rates were independent of each other. Now, all of the rates are homogeneous in the terms of it's weighted on the weighted lift volume approach, how high we have to lift that water. So that's how the rates are set now.
Okay, thank you.
So you did have a question, but if there were any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
If not, I would entertain a motion. Yes, question?
I'm having some deja vu. Like, didn't we already go, is this more of just a formality? I thought we've already kind of discussed this, hashed it out, agreed upon it.
Yeah, last year we went through, and that's where we came up with the methodology, and we did have the rates in the ordinance for the next 2, we had the rates in the staff report for the following 2 years, which are the 2 that I presented today, but the ordinance itself only had 1 year's worth of rates in it. This year's ordinance does have the 2 years of rates, so the first one would be, like I said, it's as soon as administratively practical, and then the next one would be July 1st, 2019.
Okay, and those costs were per unit, right?
Per unit of water, yes.
Okay. So if you, that's just hypothetical,
Okay.
you don't have to go back, but
Okay.
let's just say one's going up 10 cents a unit, right? And the average house uses 13 units, you're talking $1.30.
$1.30, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Director Martin?
2 questions. Number 1, if you go back to the graph chart that you had,
Is that 21?
the graph.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So is this graph saying, because I assume, did you just start at 16, 17?
Yeah, if you went back one previous year, 15, 16, it was 40%. I don't really have the data offhand for anything prior to that.
Okay, so prior to that, do you know when we started pump zones?
In the 80s, 90s?
Long time,
It's been a while.
Been-
We've had pump zones since I've been here, but I've been here for about 13 years.
long time. And I don't know how you do this, just, it's always a suggestion to me, is to make this plain and easy for the general public to read. If I was reading these charts, it's like, man, I'm gonna be going up 32 cents a gallon. I don't know that it's per unit, which is in this district, 700 and some odd gallons, in other districts, 1,000 gallons. And what does that mean to the general consumer? So
Right.
I can just picture the guy coming home, or the guy home, or the wife home, and rips it open, the wife's home, she rips it open, sees it, says, hey honey, our water's going up 32 cents. What does that mean?
Yeah, on our rate sheet, it does spell out that 1 unit, it is a 1 unit, and 1 unit equals 748 gallons. It doesn't have it on this
Okay.
chart right here, but on our rate sheet that's on the website, it does show that 1 unit of water equals 748 gallons.
Okay, and does it show average use for a single-family home?
It, on the rate sheet, it does not.
Because there again, before I got into this industry, I don't know what 700 gallons of water
Right.
looks like. I have no idea. I don't know if that's all I use, or if I use 1,000 times that. I think the more information we can put out there, the better it is. I think we try very hard, but I think we use averages, because as Mike just brought up, it goes up 32, well, it's only going up
Right, it is.
$1.30. Sounds like a lot when you look at this.
Mhm.
Sounds immense, but it's not. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? With that, I will entertain a motion to,
I
oh, you had the motion.
have a motion, I just didn't have a second.
And there's a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Oh, so this is also a resolution. Thank you. Is somebody watching me here?
You know, by the time you get done this year, you're
I'll
gonna
know
have this down.
exactly.
You're gonna have this
Well,
down.
you're my
I know,
wingman.
I'm
You're
your
supposed to
wingman,
keep
I
me
know.
alive. Thank gosh for the other guy.
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Pinella?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes. Thank you very much. Item 3.3, California Special District Association
3.2.
3.2.
I'm on you. I'm
Well,
watching
thank
you.
you.
Keep my eyes open.
Ordinance establishing administrative charges to cover indirect costs for fiscal year 2018, 2019.
Yeah, so this time, Finance Manager Wes Owen will be presenting our overhead rate.
Thank you.
I feel better now.
Me too. Good evening, President Hernandez, members of the board. This is an item that's brought to the board every year after the budget is adopted because it's based on budgeted direct and indirect costs. The overhead rate, I'll talk about, I'm going to give a little background and the methodology for calculating it, and then before we actually give staff's recommendation.
What page you on, Wes?
This should be, there's a staff report in there, I'm not sure what page it's on, do you know, Diane?
58.
58?
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
there's a staff report, and then actually is a 4-page staff report. On page 3 of 4, there is the full calculation for you, so I will be referring to that, so if you have it handy. So before I get started, I want to make sure that we understand what overhead does. Overhead is a calculation that actually moves costs from operations to the cost of the appropriate project or asset. So you're reducing the operating costs and moving that percentage from operations to the project or asset. So now that that's been said, why do we calculate overhead? We calculate overhead for 2 main reasons. The first is because GAAP requires it. Generally accepted accounting principle says you have to calculate overhead in order to determine the appropriate cost of the project or the asset. That is defined as the direct materials and labor associated with that asset plus the supporting costs. And the supporting cost would be the overhead. Second, it eliminates any unfair burden on the ratepayers. By reducing the operating costs and moving it to the appropriate project, you're actually reducing your operating costs and reducing the burden on the ratepayers. So in 2013, the district had a cost of service study performed by Black & Veatch. And in that cost of service study, we asked that they review our overhead calculation. They recommended that we apply a single overhead rate to direct labor based on improved budgeted amounts and effective July 1st of each fiscal year. The overhead rate for the district is applied to outside contract costs, developer projects, and miscellaneous billings. Their methodology for calculating that was recommended as budgeted indirect costs plus employee benefits or total indirect costs over direct labor costs. And looking at that and applying it to this year's budgeted amounts, and this is where you'll see these numbers in total. I just have the total here, but the details are on page 3 of your staff report. So the total indirect costs, budget indirect costs plus employee benefits come to be $12.1 million, and the direct labor costs are $5.5 million, and that results in 219% for overhead. How does that relate to previous year's overhead rates? Here we can see 2015 was 188%, went up to 198, 205. Last year was 221, and this year we're actually going down to 219, and that's a result of the indirect costs increasing by less than the direct costs for this year's budget. So that being said, staff recommends adopting the resolution for the overhead rate at 219%.
Oh, yes.
I would just like to say that we spent quite some time on this at the Finance Committee meeting and agree with all the conclusions that staff has come up with.
And I'll just add that, I know it's kind of a minor reduction, but it is good to see the rate go down, because although this does not impact our regular customers, it does kind of impact the general public at large when we look at a project and any of those costs that are associated with the project, say a developer building a neighborhood or something like that, and that we have some involvement in, and we're building them this overhead rate, to have it go down, that's less money that's going into the price of that home, so that helps keep housing costs down. So I'm glad to see it go down.
Any other questions? Because I have one. I'm a little confused because it's 219% Of what?
It's the indirect costs are 290% of our direct labor costs.
So,
The direct cost of producing water, the direct labor costs are 1/3 of the, well, that's not exact math, of the indirect costs. So our overhead costs, the cost of the building, the cost of our materials, all the indirect costs are 219%.
Director Hernandez, it's 219% above the actual pay rate cost for that individual. So if somebody makes $50 an hour, then they're $50 and then 219 times that for the overhead.
so, yeah, that's where I'm a little confused. So if our labor rate is $50,
2.19.
Yep, 2.19 times 2.19. So,
2.19, not 219.
which is the same as
Oh,
290%.
very good. Thank you so much.
It sounds like a lot more when I say 219.
All right, now that I've settled back down, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, this is an ordinance. Huh? Keep me around long
Almost,
enough.
almost.
Third time's a charm.
This will be a roll call.
This will be ordinance 209. Director Ellisor?
Yes.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Pinella?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes. Very good. Now we're gonna go to 3.3. California Special District.
Yes, CSA has provided a ballot for the district for voting for, there's one seat available within the southern area, or the southern network, which is seat A. The current incumbent for CA is Joe McKenzie, and Joe has provided information that the board has to review, and this is really up for board discussion.
Yes, sir.
Despite all the accolades that the person running wants, the incumbent, Joe McKenzie's done a fantastic job and is our neighbor, and I would move that we support Joe McKenzie.
Second.
Any questions on that? I do have, can we send in a letter of support? Is that what we're being asked to do?
Yes, there's actually,
Actually, no, we did not. It's actually the election time
Oh,
now,
this is
so
the elections,
I will
okay.
actually be casting a vote on behalf of the board.
Very good, thank you. With that, and we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. That's the end of the action items. Our general manager
yes,
what do we call you?
I'm still the district engineer.
Oh, good.
So-
Well, you're acting as the general manager.
Posing,
Opposing, yes.
posing.
Poser, he's a poser.
Just a couple updates. First off, the engineering committee is scheduled for the 23rd, next Monday. And we're gonna have 4 items on there that we know about. The Rock Springs, which is out to bid, update on the groundwater scope and fee to see if, get direction from the committee on how to move forward on that. Update on the locker room, and then also an update on the Stargaze, a pilot project with the lining and the water line. So those are the 4 items that are scheduled for that. Strategic plan meeting is scheduled for the 24th, which is Tuesday. The boardroom AV upgrades is still on schedule starting August 2nd, I believe, and is supposed to be completed by the 14th, so prior to the second board meeting in August. But again, as General Manager Pruden stated, if things are delayed, we'll have to make some accommodations. The employee luncheon is scheduled for August 2nd. The Stargaze project, just a quick update on that. As the board may recall, the pilot project with slip lining, the original completion date sent out to our customers were July 23rd. The project's hit some delays. They're about a week behind schedule, and then a piece of equipment broke down last week, actually. Good news is they got the equipment back up and running, and they're going to be reinstating services, which drilling out the services from the liner so this way they can reconnect people starting tomorrow. And we got a new schedule in from the contractor and from the staff to me just today, about an hour ago. And it looks like they're going to be getting people back on the water line, not the high line, starting the week of July 31st, and hope to be complete by the end of that week. We're gonna look at accelerating the schedule, working some extra hours and weekends where it doesn't interfere with the lives of our customers. And that may be accelerated, assuming that there's no other snafus. And so far, that's the schedule that we've got from the contractor. And last but not least, Glenn is back tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, General Manager Pruden will be back in his hot seat. So, thank you.
He's actually physically gonna be in the office?
Physically, he's in town tonight,
Ah.
and I'm sure he'll be jet lagged. I'm sure he'll show up in the office. I don't know how long. So,
Just not.
Yes, Director.
You mentioned only one, Stargaze. What about the other one?
River Run is on the same schedule. So both, it's a Stargaze project, but you're right, Director Martin, both River Run and Stargaze, the connection schedules are continuing parallel.
So we are looking at this point at the 3rd as the completion date?
That's the point we're looking at from the contractor. I'm hoping nothing else goes wrong on that project.
And have we offered the residents there any?
Yes, we're actually the residents there are not being charged for the commodity charge of water the entire time they've been hooked up on the High Line. Staff is actually preparing a letter with the new schedule update, in which we're going to reiterate the fact that the commodity charge is going to be waived the entire time when they're during this project, essentially.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Great job from our staff. Our interim staff.
Very good. Anything further?
Nope.
Legal counsel?
Just report on two legal Assembly Bill matters. Assembly Bill 2649 is a bill that was introduced towards the end of June, which would allow GSAs to apply to the state board for temporary emergency permits for basically putting water into the groundwater basins. So that's moving forward. The other thing is Senate Bill 998, which is the water bill, is living a charmed life. It's now moved over to the Assembly side and is being considered by the Environmental Safety and Toxics Committee, who has very little experience with water issues, so it's living a charmed life. That's all I have to report.
Very good. San Diego County Water Authority.
Actually, our meeting's next week, but I had two things. One that is related to what Jim just told us, and it's on the water tax. I think I told you at the last meeting, and you missed this, but it looked like it didn't get into a trailer bill, and it didn't look like it had support, but it's still alive and could be signed at the last minute. And interestingly enough, some of the proponents for it now is Coca-Cola as a company is promoting a water tax. So that you should ban Coca-Cola from your diet. That's one thing. And secondly, you knew the MWD had voted to support the Delta Fix. And I don't know how much you're aware of, but they were challenged as a Brown Act violation. So they never said they had violated it, but to make it right, we did a revote and it passed. So we're on that line ahead at this time. I think that's it.
Very good. Encina. Capital Committee met this morning, and we approved a contract with Kenny Jenks to do an assessment of our assets. And we also reviewed the E-Camp, our capital improvements. That was a short meeting. Finance? Policy?
Yeah, EWA Policy and Finance Committee met July 10th. We had two items. The first was we received and filed the annual auditor's communication with those charged with governance. Second item is we recommended to the board a resolution appropriating funds for fiscal year 2019 operating and capital program budgets.
Very good. Standing committees. Finance?
Yes, Finance, we did have a committee meeting, and as just said with Wes, he was excellent at bringing forth the overhead review, and we completely understood, unlike prior years where I didn't, completely understood exactly why we were charging what we were charging. And also some really good news is you may remember that the OPEB funding status. This is OPEB that we've set aside $200,000 for the past 9 months in order to bring that to having a zero balance. Ongoing, we just pay what we normally pay, and that's been completed. So we now have nothing owed on our OPEB balance. Just we pay our normal rate schedule. So that was good, and I think the Finance Committee really is keying in on that as we look at funds coming in from other sources, how we can pay off future debt, specifically unfunded liabilities in but there's one that's done.
Yeah,
So
very-
congratulations to the board.
Very good. And we have not had an engineering committee until next week.
Till Monday.
Very good. Director's report, meetings, conferences?
I'd just like to say that as the rep for Region 10 on AQUA, we've had 3 telephone conferences regarding the October Region 10 event. And it's going to be in Dana Point, but we haven't established the place. It looks like that will be the meeting. And we're working on innovations as a theme, but it's going to be more about removing barriers to innovation and moving forward. And because there's been a lot of things that are very innovative, and yet we run into these barriers with policy or with regulations that stop us from doing what we want to do. And one of those has to do with the desal, where we're trying to redo the intake, outtake, discharge, and this is our 22nd option. And we're still not sure, and it's these little minute things, so the technology is often out there, but the acceptance of it isn't. So we're hoping to not just talk about what's innovative, but how we can use it and how we can overcome or combine ourselves in a way that will get it to move forward. So it sounds kind of exciting.
What, is there a date certain on that?
It's October 18th,
Very good.
Thursday.
Very good. Director Ellis?
On meetings?
Yes.
Yesterday, I attended the Council of Water Utilities meeting, and the guest speaker was Brandy Turner with Semper Energy, who is the parent company of SDG&E, and she said, I don't know what her title is, I think outreach.
Oh, you're going to have to speak up for me, I can't hear you.
Public outreach, I'm sorry, and her, the subject of her talk was energy efficiency programs that may be available to agencies such as ours.
And I attended the same meeting, and it just goes to show you what little nuggets you get. So this morning at the Capital Campaign Committee, because the same individual indicated there was this outreach, and I don't remember hearing anything about stakeholder meetings from our group staff. So I asked Encina about theirs, and they said, yes, they have attended, and their account executive from SDG&E has been working with Encina to determine when the peak charges time is. Because for our cogen operator, 130 horsepower motor, you can imagine it ramps up big, and if it's in that peak, they just charge the bejeebers out of us. But with the new efficiency program, we're gonna save about 45% of our energy costs on that particular item. So there's money coming to us as an agency.
I have a question, 130 horsepower?
Yeah.
1,300 horsepower.
No, I think I heard
130 horsepower is the size of a car engine.
I heard 130.
Oh, okay.
Maybe,
That's very efficient.
yeah.
And with that.
So that was my time there.
I attended the same meeting and couldn't put it into better words.
Yep, and same here, attended the same meeting that Brandy put on from the SDG&E's Energy Innovation Center. I guess the little takeaway among everything else that was already said was that she was kind of talking about their different customer classes, residential, commercial, agriculture, so forth. When she got to agriculture, she kind of made a point of how little electricity that they use, but she didn't seem to really recognize, I think Tom Kennedy brought it up during the meeting, that their energy cost is actually wrapped up into their water costs. And so they're paying their electric bill through their water bill. So that was pretty interesting. But other than that, it was very informative, and it was good to get an update from them.
Very good. Anything further? All right.
I will wait for this.
Item number 5.1, future agenda items.
Oh, I just would like to check that our, and I think James brought it up, that our meeting's on the 24th at 3 o'clock.
I believe so, yeah. 24th at 3 o'clock for Strapline?
In this room.
Yes. Getting the yes.
Great, thank you.
We,
Yes.
President, Can we get an update, James, if you can pass along to Glenn? We haven't heard anything about our land back here behind us in quite a while. And I remember last year when we were first talking about this, we were really kind of going back and forth of how much time do we need to give the school district to look at it and so forth and so forth. And we were like, well, the day after it expires, we need to move on it. It's been, now, what are we in, July?
Yeah.
So, and I haven't heard anything about it, so if we can get an update of just where we are and
Okay.
what the plan is. And maybe that's gonna come up on Tuesday at the master planning meeting too, but, this year's flying by. It's gonna be Christmas before we know it.
Director Evans?
Yes, I have a couple questions. First, is there or is there not a meeting on August 1st?
I think there is.
Because I thought we didn't have 3 people.
I have one.
Oh, wait, I'm not gonna be here.
I won't be here.
And
either.
I won't be here.
Well, that means we're not gonna.
You won't have a quorum.
Well, can we get together?
Jim and I will have lunch. Thank you very much.
We're gonna build a district.
Yeah.
Okay, no August 1st.
So that was my first question, and you might want to just talk to Glenn and see what we do with that. The second thing is, I really wanted to compliment the entire district and you, Mr. Gumpel, on handling things so smoothly while Glenn was gone. I will tell him you struggled a little, so he won't feel too bad that you didn't miss him, but I thought you did a really great job. And then I also wanted to make another comment, and this is to all of you and staff, is that this past week, I personally had some real troubles with the hot weather and actually ended up almost an emergency over it. And I thought so many times about all of you out there in the heat, the guys out on Fulton, and how there is nothing cool about Meadowlark and some of the things you're doing. And I just wanted to compliment you that we didn't have, I didn't hear of any big issues, and you took care of everything, and my water came in. And at those moments, I felt incredibly grateful for our district, for all of us. I think we have a great district, and I think that was really trying times. And I felt even if we'd have had a fire, we were okay. And that meant a lot to me. So I wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Anything further?
No, I think though, just as a follow-up, I think it's great, but I think Ed's the only one that's probably been outside. The rest of the staff I see here has been in 68-degree weather the entire week.
Yeah, good
And
for
they
you guys.
deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of hot
It's
air
out on
here.
the second floor.
Yeah.
Hot air.
Yeah, very good. Nothing further? We're adjourned.